Hello artists, welcome back to the art room. Mrs. Leary here. I hope you had time to watch the interview that's located right above this video. If you haven't, pause this video, go up and watch it because it's really neat to meet the artist that we're going to be talking about this week. She's a local artist here in Orcutt. Her name is Katy Smith. Mrs. Smith actually has some students in our Orcutt schools as well, so thanks for sharing your mom with us. That's kind of cool. This week we're going to be talking about a French term, plein air, which means outdoors, and Mrs. Smith told us about it in the video. We're going to be practicing today in much the same way that she does her artwork. We're going to go outdoors. So the supplies that you need for this week are crayons and a piece of paper. You will also need something to put your paper on while you draw. So I have a clipboard. If you don't have a clipboard handy, if you have a notebook, this is a plastic notebook, you could set your paper on top of that. Something that you can use as a tabletop, a piece of cardboard, maybe a book, anything like that. We're going to be taking our artwork outside. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment, but first I want to watch this little bit of the interview from Mrs. Smith.
So this painting is one color. This is undersea green. And it's a shadow that was cast onto my paper from a plant. And then I painted the shadow using just undersea green. So that's my color that I love them very most because it actually has blue and yellow in it. And so when it dries, it separates out so you can actually see the different parts that are in this paint. So that's my favorite.
Oh, that was so neat. Now we know Mrs. Smith's favorite color too. All right, so she was outdoors. She was using natural lighting. And did you catch what she did to make her piece of artwork? She used shadow. We're going to be using the same thing in our artwork today. If you don't have watercolors, don't worry. We're going to be using our crayons. But after this, I'll tell you about if you wanted to use watercolors, what you would do. But we're going to use crayons. I think it looks beautiful that way. Really quick, here's the up-close picture of her artwork. I forgot to show that. We're going to take our paper outdoors and we're going to draw a shadow. Because plein air relies on natural light, we're going to do that today too. So a little hint, I went out to work on this project myself and then a cloud covered the sun and I couldn't find any shadows. But you know, within 30 minutes the sun was out again and I was able to have plenty of time to draw. So you might have to plan it. It looks like the beginning of next week this week we're going to have some good weather. So you'll have to make sure that the sun is out so you can find a shadow. So if you go out and you're trying to find a shadow to draw and you can't find one, it's probably because it's a little too cloudy and you need to just try again later. Here's a picture of what it looked like when I was trying. So this is a little olive tree that I found and I put my clipboard and my paper just gently inside the branches and then looked at the shadow that fell. And I took one crayon, any color that I chose, I think I chose gray here, and I outlined the shadow. You could outline around the edges of your shadow. I tried to find the individual leaves and I outlined those, but you don't have to do them. You won't be able to get every leaf in your picture. In fact, I did another one and there was a lot of shadow and I was kind of outlining where the light was in some places because it was so dark and full of shadows. So you're outlining all the lines that you see. Here's an example of what mine looked like when I was done. So you can see the branch shadow and the different leaves that I outlined. You can see over here that it was just a lot of darkness. And so, you know, I don't see the individual leaves over here. I just see these big sections. Last lesson we talked about in our splash lesson how some things overlap. And so you can see that a lot of these leaves are overlapping in their shadow. And you can't tell where one begins and one ends. And that's fine. That's part of the fun of this. This looks beautiful just as it is. So this is your assignment today, to go outdoors en plein air, the French term, outdoors, and find a shadow to trace. If you're in a place where you could pick something and set it on your paper, you could do that too. So I didn't want to pick a leaf off of this olive tree, or a branch. So I used it as it was, where it was, and kind of balanced myself there and drew it. But you could, if it was somewhere where you had permission, you could pick a leaf or something from the garden or a branch and you could hold it above your paper and sit at a table too. That would be fine. All right, so we have an option this week. This is only an option. You do not have to do this, and if you don't have a supply, that's okay, but I might have a hint of how you can do it even if you don't. But one of the cool things that we could do also is watercolor. Mrs. Smith is a watercolor artist. I know we all don't have watercolors at home. If you don't have watercolors, but you would like to watercolor, I'm going to show you something kind of cool. You can use markers if you have markers at home. So you would take markers, and either, I have wax paper here, but aluminum foil would work too. I just didn't have any aluminum foil. So you would take your wax paper or your aluminum foil, and you would just color on it with your marker. And then you could take a little bit of water. If you have a Q-tip, that would work. If you don't have a paintbrush, that's fine. If you have a Q-tip, you can take this, and here, let's see, I'm going to show you on this paper napkin. And you can paint with it, just like it's watercolor. Sometimes it comes out a little lighter, not as dark, but it's the same idea. So if you don't have watercolors, you could use markers, put them on some kind of surface they won't stick to, like wax paper or aluminum foil, and use a Q-tip or a paintbrush to watercolor. That's a little way to make your own watercolors at home if you need to. If you do have, this way and the way I'm about to show you would work the same. So if you do have watercolors, this is mine. I think this is actually a $5 set from Michael's, if you're curious. Sometimes I'm curious what people have. I just really like all the different colors, and it's not a very expensive set. So you don't need this. I was just telling you what I have here because this is one of my favorite ones to use when I'm at home. All right, so I just took my watercolors and added to my picture. I'll tell you a little bit more about this, and I'll show you the process of me doing this watercolor really quick. I'm going to put a little paint on my brush, and then I have my paper towel here in case I get a little too much water on it to dry it off. And I'm going to paint around the shapes on my paper. And just like Mrs. Smith said, my color sometimes dries darker or lighter in different spots. As the artist, you do have some control over that by how much water you add, but sometimes it is just the paint. It dries quicker, or it shows up a little differently. So I'm going to carefully go around my shapes and paint in my shadow. All right, and I kind of like how it looks with the black and the white, or the green and the white. So I don't know that I would paint my background, but you could paint your background. Here's another neat technique if you did want to paint your background. First, you paint with just water. This technique is called wet on wet. So you just add water to your paper, not so much that you're going to get a hole in it, that's the trick here, but just enough to get your paper really wet. I like to go around things carefully. I'm just painting with water. And then you go back and add your color. So I'm going to add a little blue. The paint goes where the water is. So because all of this part of my paper is wet, it kind of gives this airy look to it, kind of like the sky. So I can just add a little paint, and it's going to spread around on the water that I've already put on my paper. So this side I did dry. I put the watercolor onto dry paper. This side I'm putting the watercolor on wet paper. You can see the difference kind of in the look that you get. So you can play around with your watercolors. Try painting with water first and then adding the watercolor over it. And then try painting, I'm gonna add some water in these little sections too. And then try painting with water first and adding your color on top, and see what a different response you get from your watercolors. All right, and there you have it. So our project is to draw a shadow in plein air, outdoors, And this is our project, but you have the option of adding watercolor to it if you would like. You can use traditional watercolors, or you can use the marker little hack that I showed you to make watercolors yourself. I hope you guys have fun with this. It's so fun to get outside and to see nature, and I think the results are just beautiful. All right, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you next time.